Praising God again. Let's call Jeremiah 41 antisocial, because I'm not scared to be wrong. And antisocial is a clinical term for an area outside of my expertise, but this chapter reminded me so much of the little bit I've learned about antisocial personality disorder that I wanted to at least use this as an opportunity to connect some of the characters we see in the Bible to some of the language we now use in our culture to describe certain types of deeply flawed characters. So in this chapter, a man we mentioned in the last chapter by the name of Ishmael is going to be the character that we use to look at some of the characteristics of what some would call antisocial personality disorder. Verses 1-3 saying that man, Ishmael, came with 10 men to present himself as a friend of Gedaliah. While at dinner with Gedaliah, though, he has those 10 men join in killing Gedaliah with the Judeans they were able to find with him, along with the Chaldeans left behind, meaning those are the Babylonians left behind to help guard them or oversee the fact that this is now under the supervision of the kingdom of Babylon. Verses 4-8 say that they were not done because the next day, 80 men, as we saw in the last chapter, people were gathering to Gedaliah because he was providing protection for the remnant. Ishmael, however, looks at that as another opportunity, starting to hack through that next 80 men who came in peace. Once again, presenting himself as something he wasn't. He used the guise of friendship to perpetuate more murders, sparing 10 men who offered him money as the price of their lives. No empathy in his heart for them beyond what he could get from them. And so those 10 survivors are spared. However, the bodies of those who were slain are cast into a cistern, similar to what we saw in the days of Jeremiah's captivity, or the days he was cast into the cistern. He was delivered. These men or these people are not, as they are cast into the cistern. Their dead bodies are cast into the cistern. However, there are a number of captives that he will take on his way to the Ammonites, those who seem to have hired him or put him up to basically turning on his own people. And this one distinction is probably important. I made a mistake in the last chapter at guessing as to who Ishmael was. It's because I am going through these chapters a little more quickly than I am used to. Ordinarily, I would have listened enough to catch the fact that this was one of the king's officials. And so it says that he came from the royal family. And so it makes his betrayal even more disturbing on some levels. However, we're in chapter 41, but let me slow down. Verses 11-18 are going to talk about the reply from Johanan, the man who originally warned Gedaliah of Ishmael's true character. When Johanan gets word, he mounts up to go capture Ishmael. Ishmael, being a coward, flees. He himself saves his own life, fleeing to the Ammonites. However, Johanan is able to recover much of what he was carrying off in the way of captives to the Ammonites, giving them at least something to restart with, understanding the great loss that they have now had by their leader, who seemed to be a great man with a big heart, but as we mentioned before, probably not enough discernment to protect the people from the tragedy they have now faced. Even though they no longer have Gedaliah, Johanan has taken over to basically at least save the portion of the remnant that was about to be taken off into Ammonite captivity, understanding they have been spared Babylonian captivity. That remnant, however, now facing new fears, as one of their royals has now slain not only the governor that the king of Babylon left over the territory, but 10 of his soldiers. And so now they are going to fear the reprisal from Babylon and entertain the thought of fleeing to Egypt, a thought that's going to open the door to even more trouble in chapter 42. Again, even though my understanding of antisocial personality disorder is not qualified by having a degree, take this as my opinion, that the things I saw in Ishmael that correlated to the little bit I know about the disorder were the things that distinguish APD for short from the other cluster B personality disorders that all share the common characteristics of habitual dishonesty, a lack of empathy, and a sense of entitlement. The thing that I saw in Ishmael that typically tends to be unique to APD is the lack of a functioning conscience in combination with not just habitual lying, but the kind of lying that dons a completely different personality, what sometimes the Bible will describe as a wolf in sheep's clothing, presenting yourself as an individual who's one of the group, who's really there to feed off of the group or feed at the expense of the group. Thus the murders, not content to murder on day one, donning the fraudulent personality on day two to carry out more murders, only sparing those who had something to offer him. And finally, in addition to the fraudulent personality used to facilitate the murders without conscience, you have the recklessness of the entire scheme, understanding that this man is not only killing the authority figure that the king of Babylon, the leader of the free world, left in charge of the remnant of Judah, he also killed the king's soldiers. I don't mean the king of Israel's soldiers. He killed the king of Babylon's soldiers. It's a reckless act. And another red flag that tends to distinguish APD from the other, once again, cluster B personality disorders. Once again, that is my unqualified opinion, but I'm not scared to give it because I invite the comment section or anyone else to reach out to me and help us have a better understanding of the different character disorders or anything that can help us better realize that the Bible is really describing some of the same human conditions that we're still dealing with to this day, just in different language than we use today. With the lasting practical lesson for all of us not being, try to go diagnose somebody with APD. But as we saw in the last chapter, try not to let your desire to see the best in people blind you to who they really are.